your girl Harpo, and welcome to episode 7 of Brown Girl Guilt, titled, I don't know how to say no, bro. Okay, story time. You're at the bar with your friends. You're looking fly. You're looking spicy. You've got a drink in your hands. Your girlfriends are on your side. And you got a care in the world. A man walks up to you, and you notice that he's probably interested in you. And why wouldn't he be, man? You're a honey. But you, on the other hand, are not. He starts to make small talk while moving closer and closer to you. You try to end the convo and get back to your lip syncin and drink sippin, but he stops you and says, "Can I buy you a drink?" You panic. You don't want the drink and you want the man to also leave you alone. So you sort through the filing cabinet drawer titled Exclusives in your head. You bump into the summer 2020 banger by AP Dhillon and Intense. Wrong drawer labeled excuses. You keep searching. Bam, there it is. You ask yourself which one you're going to use this time. Oh, I have a boyfriend, sorry. Or, thank you, but it's girls' night and I'd kind of like to get back to them. Or, oh, I've had way too much to drink already, but thank you though. You take one out of the drawer, fumble while you're saying it, sweating and getting nervous because lying always sucks. He looks at you in disbelief and he walks away. And this is a tale as old as time because women, we are constantly playing mental gymnastics when shuffling through the excuses drawer, when instead we can literally just say no. And I get it. Sometimes saying you have a boyfriend is much of a safer option and a much of a safer bet than to tell a man's, no, bro, I'm just not into you like that. But this pattern of not being able to say no bleeds into so many other facets of our lives as women. Straight up, I don't know how to say no, bro. And in episode 7 of Brown Girl Guilt, titled just that, I'm having a chat with one of the boldest, baddest, most outspoken women in my circle, Pamela Sangha. Pam is strong. She tells you like it is. She takes no shit and she gives no shit. In this episode, I ask her what her relationship is with the word no, how to set boundaries with yourself and others, and how to stop playing mental gymnastics with your mind's filing cabinet drawer. Hi, Pam. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good. So, in my intro, the way that I described you was that I'm having this chat with one of the boldest, baddest, most outspoken women in my circle, Pam. And I said that, you know what? Pam is strong. She tells you like it is. She takes no shit and she gives no shit. What is it like for you to be that person in many people's lives?
It's really funny because my birthday's in January and all of my friends, it's a Capricorn trait to be like
Mm-hmm.
that. And as I always think that I'm being funny, because I don't want it to come across as being like an unfiltered bitch, but and my friends will all tell you this, I'm a jerk, but I'm not wrong. I don't open my mouth unless like I'm fundamentally correct in what I'm saying. Um, so that's why, right? I guess that's like an overthinking part of me. Like I won't open my mouth unless I know that what I'm telling you is 100% correct. And because I'm an overthinker, I've already analyzed it in every situation and every scenario. And also I've analyzed it from the way that you're going to analyze it. And I know what I'm saying is going to be the right thing to say. It's just always a little bit difficult to hear.
But I love that because you should be able to openly say what you feel and you should be openly able to set like vocal, verbal boundaries. And we're going to talk about boundaries in a second. And this is exactly why I wanted to have this kind of a conversation with you because I think you understand the importance of saying no, but you also understand the struggle sometimes with saying no because you just said you're overthinking it. You're mapping it all out in your head first and then you're thinking it through. And so then when it does come out, it comes out with a lot of intention. And so women often struggle with doing that. They struggle with being vocal. They struggle with, really setting verbal boundaries and telling people how it actually is or how it makes them feel. And I admire that trait about you so much because I can agree. Like I've been in public settings with you and you're being hilarious. You're so funny and you'll say something and I'm like looking around. I'm like, oh my God, did the person that she's talking about hear that? And how are they going to react? And like for me, because I'm like this person who doesn't know how to say it sometimes like it is, I'm in admiration of it, but I'm also like, damn, did she just say that? It's crazy.
I know it's never coming from, I think the reason I get away with it is it's never coming from a place where I'm trying to make someone feel small, right? Because that's never my intent. Like from a lifetime of being bullied, I would never intentionally make anyone feel some type of way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this episode is titled "I don't know how to say no, bro," and it's because I think, like myself, a lot of women just don't know how to say no. And this can be, your own opinion as a woman, or you can kind of tap into your counselor toolbox. But where do you think this tendency to say everything under the sun but no comes from for women?
So it comes from, so women always have to be, when you ask a woman like what she is, she'll tell you all the roles that she fulfills, right? And so it comes from trying to put women in these boxes. And if you don't fit a box, you subconsciously, whether we like it or not, there's just this societal, systemic like thing when it comes to women to be put into
Mm.
specific boxes. And saying no takes you out of those boxes, which is so scary, right? That's why. That's why you need an excuse anytime you want to say just anytime you just want to say no. Um and that's because it's really scary because we are so women are naturally nurturers. We're naturally like the empathetic, like understanding, okay, they would do it for me, so even if I don't have energy to give into this right now, I'll do it. Or like, I don't want to make anyone feel bad, because you also know as a woman what it's like to feel bad all the time, right? That's just kind of a part of this whole entire industry of being a woman. So I think that's like, I don't think, I know that's why. That's why. It's because of how society has structured how women ought to be, ought to think, ought to say, how to behave. And no is always an act of defiance. And what do they say about defiant women, Harpo? Not great things.
That they're not great, that they're loud, they're disruptive, they've strayed off course.
Yes, exactly. So that's why, single handedly, like that's why it's
Mm.
always difficult.
And I love that you mentioned the word excuses, because I mean it is. It's so much easier to say an excuse, and especially in the case where like you're being put in a position where you have to make someone else feel bad. It's so much easier to just give somebody an excuse instead of just straight up saying, I don't have the capacity, I don't have the interest, or no, simply there's no explanation for it. And there's this quote, right, where it's like no is a full sentence. It's an answer. It's a complete sentence. But we don't see it that way. It's always no, but, or no, sorry. And I
Yes,
hate that we do that as women, that there's always a follow-up.
always apologizing. We're always apologizing. Um, it's really funny because in 2016, I had a year of no. Like Shonda Rhimes came out with this book and she was like, year of yes. And I was like, no, I'm done being a yes bitch. It's going to be year of no for me. And it was exhilarating because I used to be a yes bitch. I would say yes to everything, even if I didn't have energy, or even if I didn't want the attention, or even if I didn't want like, I would say yes. I would just say yes because I was coming from a place where I was like deeply insecure and like such a people pleaser, right? Because I had just been trained to not rock the boat. And I was so depleted and I was so anxious. And I like, that was the year I started therapy. And I was like, listen, like, I can't keep giving out all of this energy. Like, I have to just be able to have the gumption to say no and not have to explain why I'm saying no. Because the explaining is exhausting, right? Because we replay it in our heads after, and we're like, did they believe us? Did they not believe us? Oh, should I have just done it? Should I have just gone? Oh, like, you know what I mean? And so we're living through it whether we did it or not. Like, we're still like giving energy to it.
I had an example actually once where when I started to become cognizant of how, yeah, like just like you, how I was saying yes to everything and I had no energy for it, I had no capacity for it, how it was being so detrimental to me. Like when people would ask me to go out for coffee or go out for dinner, and I would like physically start to, like, my chest would start to tighten because I just didn't have it. I just didn't have it in me. I had so much on my plate. And the physical act of saying no used to tighten my chest. But when I became cognizant of how much I say yes, I started to, again, be super intentional about saying no. There was this guy that I've been friends with for years, and we were on and off friends, and all of a sudden he decided he wanted to be romantically interested in me. Fine, that's okay, that happens. But the way that he was pursuing it was really inappropriate to me, and it felt like he wasn't necessarily respecting the friendship that we had. And so when he messaged me one night and said, let's go out, I want to take you on a date, and he said all these things, all I said in that moment was no. I just said a no, and I didn't give an explanation, and I didn't say anything. And he was so taken back by it. He was like, what do you mean no? I said, no, I don't want to go out with you. He's like, why not? I said, because I just don't see you like that. You are my friend and I do not see you that way. And he couldn't understand. And he got so butthurt, Pam. He like unsent all the messages and he just like unfollowed me, didn't talk to
Oh my
me. I was
goodness.
like, okay, first of all, this is exactly
Because you
why.
hurt his ego.
Yeah, this is exactly why women don't say no because of the aftermath. But I was like, I don't give a shit. You know, if this is the way you're going to act, I might as well say no and have you exit to the left anyway.
Yeah, and that's not somebody you would have ever wanted in your life in the first place. Do you know what I mean? So I have this amazing group of friends, and all I have to say to them is no, I don't have the energy. And they know that that's like the answer. And it's that simple. And it should be that simple. It should be that simple with your friends. It should be that simple in your relationship. It should be that simple. Like, I don't have energy, no. Like, and that's it. No explanation needed. They just should understand that. But I find it's really interesting that that was your example, because I find, like, so I've had male friendships that were very inappropriate as well. And then the second I said no, it turned hostile. It just did. And I was just like, we were friends. I don't understand. And then it wasn't until like I did my master's and got the degree that this behavior is also because men don't know how to showcase their emotions because they're not allowed. So instead of being hurt and just being vulnerable in that situation, they're gonna retaliate. That's it, right? Because that's what they know to do the best. Oh, she's a whore anyway. Screw her. Like, oh, she's a slut. Like, whatever. I didn't want to date her in the first place. I was just trying to get it. Shut up, dude. Like, it's fine. Like, like, yeah, it didn't go your way. Like, it's all good. And I just find it so interesting.
Yeah, and the hostility, like I started to, around my friend group, tell my friends, I was like, when we go out and we're being approached by people or men or whatever, like do not resort to the classic tale of, oh no, sorry, I have a boyfriend. Like, no, honey, you ain't got a boyfriend. Like, I know you don't. I don't. So why are we here telling these men that we have one just so that they'll go away? And it's because we're placing more value in that over our own feelings. It's like, I want to say no to you, not because I have a partner. I mean, even if I did have a partner, I wouldn't be interested in you regardless, right? So I think there needs to be more value placed on what it is that's the first reason. What's the first reason? The first reason is I'm just simply not interested. And so everything else should come secondary, right? Like, yes, you have a partner, or yes, you're not interested, or yes, it's girls' night, or whatever. But the not being interested and the simple act of the no is what should come first.
Yes. But the reason, okay, and also I love that you brought up like, oh, I have a boyfriend. So the reason women do that is because men are more likely to respect a man in that scenario. So you have a boyfriend, so he's going to respect the man as opposed to just respecting your no,
Facts.
right? A man will leave you alone the second you're like, sorry, I have a boyfriend, it's girls' night. But if you're just like, no, I'm not interested, they're going to perpetually try and try and try. And it's like, what? Like, why is it that you can't respect my no? But if I told you I had a man's, you're going to respect that instead because you respect the dude more.
Facts. Yeah. And I think that's why we just do it. We lean into it because it is so much easier, right? And we know that. And it's actually a lot safer to play that card. It really, really is, because it's like out of your hair, it's done, it's over. So it is a lot safer to play that role. You seem someone like who's very confident in saying no now. But what has your relationship been like with the word no? Has it always been like this kind of easy? I know you said in 2016 you had a year of no. Has it always been this way? Or what's that journey been like to get to this place?
Honestly, it came with a lot of initially it came with a lot of FOMO, like fear of missing out. But it wasn't really until, and this is like, and people hate this and counselors say this all the time. It wasn't until I fundamentally enjoyed spending time with myself and really, really healed this relationship with myself and realized that I actually enjoyed my own company that I got like really comfortable saying no, like genuinely. In regards to like social settings and going to everything and showing up and being everywhere and just being on the scene, I'll admit sometimes it's still not easy for me. It's up and down. Like, that's just how life is, right? Sometimes it's still not easy for me to say, especially to like to my parents. Like, it's very difficult for me to say no because it comes back to like, why the hell do you have the audacity to say no to your parents? Like, they did everything for you. They're the reason you have what you have. Like, you ungrateful asshole. Like, if they ask you to do this thing, just do it. That's the one I struggle with the most on a daily to this day. Whereas the other ones were a lot easier once I fixed that relationship with myself. As soon as I like establish self-love, and everyone rolls their eyes at that topic, and it's such a like coined, I hate how self-love has transformed on social media, because it makes my work as a therapist that much more difficult, because people assume that these like really fun things are self-love, but self-love is painful.
Mm.
It is the most painful thing, and it's the first thing that goes to the wayside when shit gets busy and shit hits the fan. And I always say this, life's a road. Sometimes there's bumps in the road and sometimes it's smooth. So just like in that, I just go back to my learning, but I still struggle with no, of course. I think it's important to understand that it's not something you're going to master, and you're going to consistently go back to being like, oh, why do I feel uncomfortable?
Mm-hmm. I love that you brought up self-love, because one of my favorite things to say is saying no is an act of radical self-love. It really is, because you are actively setting strong boundaries. You are being super intentional with your exchanges. And you're also honoring yourself. And you're right, it's become such a cliche. And I was so curious to ask you, like, I was going to ask you, like, how do you say no to things that aren't aligned for you? But I think you got to go even further back and say, like, if self-love is the first step, if self-love is the pillar, what does that even look like, Pam? Like, what is actually like engaging in self-love every single day, so that saying no to things that aren't aligned with you becomes easier or a lot more possible? What does that even look like to start with?
So, you know that little voice in your head, the person that you talk to the most all day, every day? Is that voice being a dick 100% of the time? Or have you mastered that voice so that it's full of kindness? And guess what? That voice is probably still a dick most of the time. Um, and that's because that's where it's comfortable. That's where it's always been comfortable. But the act of self-love that you have to do every day is to convince yourself that that voice and what it's saying isn't actually the truth, because it's not. It's fundamentally not true. Anything that little voice is saying is complete trash, especially if it's negative. And I say this to my clients all the time. So one negative thought that's irrational takes 5 truth rational thoughts to shut down. So that's like it takes so much. It takes so much to shut down one negative thought.
Damn.
And you can probably attest to this. You probably remember every bad thing someone has ever said about you, but you probably cannot quote everything wonderful people have said about you.
Mm-hmm.
That's how our brains work.
Yep.
So self-love has to start with changing that tiny voice. And that starts with all that hokey shit that people don't want to do. It's affirmations, it's journaling, it's shadow work, it's all the ugly sitting down with yourself. Like every time you're even judgmental to somebody else, or you're a jerk, or you're moody, or whatever it is, that's you teaching you about yourself. You have to sit in that. You have to. And most of the time we're projecting. We just project our shit onto other people. And that's why we have the society that we have. Because instead of sitting with those feelings, we project them onto other people. Like, if I feel this way, I'm going to make you feel this way, so that I don't have to deal with the fact that I feel this way. And that's the thing. So in order to strip that down, you got to undo the voice.
100%. I felt like I was often saying yes to everything and anything because I didn't want to be alone with that voice, because I didn't want to have to be in this space where I was tuned into myself. And it was so much easier to have a million distractions, because first, yes, FOMO, I needed to be everywhere and anywhere. But then it was so much better for me in that space to like have everything going on. So I did have to sit with myself. And it wasn't until I started to live alone, away from home, having solitude, not having many things to say yes to. Nobody was asking me to do anything. When I really got alone, that's when I realized, oh shit, there's stuff that's going on. And it wasn't until I stopped saying yes to everything that I realized, okay, there's a lot going on here.
Yes. So busybodies terrify me, because I'm like, why do you feel this incessant need to constantly be on the go? What have you not worked through that you are always moving? Even people who are on their grind all the time stress me out as a clinician. I'm like, okay, sweetie, that's great, but what are we doing with our unresolved trauma? Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, fine. But we're mammals. We're not supposed to grind all the time. We're not even supposed to be awake when it's dark out. Okay. Like, there's just things biologically that we try to fight all the time that's not helping our mental health. But that's busybodies are busy because they don't want to deal with themselves. And that's why they can't say no to things, is because they don't like who they are as a person, and they don't want to work, or they don't even know how to begin to work on that relationship. So they're just like, I'm going to keep giving energy to all these other things. They're not filling their cup at all. And then you crash. And you're like, why am I crashing? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Why am I crashing? You're crashing because you haven't filled your cup with the things you need. You're giving from an empty cup all over the place.
So speaking of saying no and the word crash, you are currently on like a no sugar diet, right? Is that what it is? I need to know how it is that you're saying no to my beloved sugar. And I'm looking at your face right now and you're in distress.
Oh my goodness.
So tell me, because I mean, this is an example, right? This is an example of something that is so hard to say no to because it's around you all the time. And this, I'm so excited that you're doing this no sugar diet during this recording. I want to know what it's like for you to say no to sugar, what it's been like for you to put yourself first, and how you're like curbing all those temptations to just say yes.
So it's really funny. So I started like an insane fitness regime in 2018 with my trainer and nutritionist. And I'd done this before. I had gone off sugar, and I was doing really well. And I know it's so funny, right? Because you know how shitty these things make you feel. But the pandemic hit, and I, like everyone else on this planet, comforted myself with, what are we going to make to eat today? Or what are we going to order in? Because you didn't have anything else to do. I even had a personal trainer come to my house twice a week, but it didn't matter because we were sedentary the rest of the time. We were inside. Unprecedented, really wild time. So, and then I got so comfortable in that. Like, it was so comfortable that it became uncomfortable. I was at a point, Harp, my Lululemons were uncomfortable to me. Like, I just needed to be in sweatpants, that nothing could touch my body. Like, I got to that point. And so and you have been diagnosed with PCOS, and we've had conversations with this. So they wouldn't diagnose me with PCOS because I had a regular period. But I was like, something's not right. You know what I mean? Like, something was just not right.
Yeah.
So I got diagnosed with inflammatory PCOS, and now I'm just taking the steps to deal with that condition. And so I'm off caffeine. I'm off sugar, all refined sugar. I can have fruit, which is helping a lot. But also it comes from a place where, like, I can't tell clients, like, hey, you should focus on your nutrition, and these are the triggers for these things, when I'm not also taking care of myself either, right? Like, who's going to take me seriously as a clinician if I'm not doing the same things to be well? I don't apologize for 2020 whatsoever, because my mental health was sound and fine because of how I coped and nourished myself. But at the same time, I have an understanding now that, like, we're going to be in this pandemic for another year, and I can't comfort myself in the same way, because it would just be detrimental to my overall health, which is why I'm now undergoing this. It is terrible. It is not fun. I dream about cinnamon buns. I'm on Instagram looking at cakes being made all day long. I like smell chocolate, and I it sets off joy receptors. Sugar, it's everywhere. It's in everything. I constantly want something sweet. It's so hard. It's so hard.
The reason that I bring it up is because this right here is that act of radical self-love, because you know you shouldn't have it and you know it's not good for you. But to say yes to it constantly does put you in this position where, you know, it feels good in the moment, but it might not be good for you overall. And I think saying no to those kinds of things that, you know, you have a hard time saying no to, but you know you need to say no to, that's the work, right? That is the work. And something that I struggle with saying no to is caffeine. So coffee makes me feel a very specific way, but I don't know why I keep doing it to myself. Like it makes me bloated, it makes my stomach hurt, it makes me irritable. It really makes me hungrier than I need to be. Like it just messes with my like blood sugar regulation or whatever. But I love the taste of it and I love the smell of it, but I also love this like weird cultural social thing that's attached to coffee. Like I think it's the coolest thing in the world for me to like walk around with a coffee cup. I just think it's like I don't know, it's like a social status thing. But I have to say no to it. And I haven't found myself like I say this straight up. I don't love myself enough to stop drinking coffee yet. I don't love myself enough to say no to coffee yet.
Yeah, it's so coffee for me was so hard. It was so hard because of the ritual of it. It is just I think it's the most romantic thing on this earth. Like, hey, do you want to grab a cup of coffee? Like, it's just the soothing thing, the smell of it, the like everyone will go for a coffee with you. And it makes me feel so it doesn't have those effects on me. It makes me feel I can't have more than one cup because otherwise I'll be super anxious. I know that. I know that about myself. It's like if I have a grande today, I'm gonna have an anxious day. But all summer, grande caramel macchiato, please. Like I had a caramel macchiato every day this summer. But it was because it was like the thing that I got to do for the day. I was like, I'm gonna leave the house and get a Starbucks. And also, I love holding a cup in my hand too. I pride myself on like trying to save the planet. And then when this pandemic hit and you can't use your reusable mugs, I was like, all right, but I love these like paper cups. Like I love them. They're so cute, you know? And it just is such a I don't know if you had Tumblr. Maybe you're too young, but I had Tumblr. And
No, I did. I had Tumblr. I had Tumblr. Yeah.
yeah. So you know the romantic like Tumblr coffee mug photo that with the
Yes.
nails and like the ring. Yes, I want to be that girl all the time.
Every day I want to be that girl. And I love going to coffee shops that have like this is so twisted, but I love going to coffee shops that have nice cups because I'm like the aesthetic of it. The Libra in me loves that shit. So I want to ask you to give me an example of a time where you had to say no and it was really hard. And I know that we talked about the sugar diet, but if you could look into, I mean, you're now in your 30s, but if you could look back to your 20s and your teens, what was something that you had to say no to and it was really hard, and what did you learn about yourself, and what can others learn from this example?
So I really thought about this question because you know how you picture your life in a timeline and there's like all these pivotal moments. So I'm the oldest of three in my household, and I was the first person in my like immediate family to go to university. I didn't want to go here for university. And my dad was like, he's like, no, and my parents were paying for the experience. So I applied to UVic and I got in, and I applied to UBC and SFU and Kwantlen and I got in there too. And I was like, I want to go to UVic. And my dad was like, no, like you're not moving away to go to university. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And then I talked to my mom about it. And then I was like, no, I'm not going to any of these three other universities that are here. I want to go to UVic. And it was like my first moment of like true defiance because I'm the oldest and I never rocked the boat, and I was the kid that they didn't have to worry about, and I was always an overachiever, and I was always a people pleaser, and I did everything humanly possible to make sure that they were proud of me. And I killed myself for those things, which is like a habit that has been the most difficult to break. But I think it just comes with I wish there was a support group for eldest daughters
Yes.
of Indian
We should
households.
start one, bro, first of all.
Yeah, I wish like if you're listening to this and you're the eldest daughter in an Indian household, like I will talk to you. Like we can talk. And my family is so progressive, and still there's just so much stuff that just comes with being the eldest, and that's due to Adlerian birth order, and there's so much stuff. But I said no. I was like, listen, Dad, like I'm going to UVic. Like I'm not going to these other universities. And he was really upset. And then my mom I remember like I rocked the boat. Like it was like months of deliberation. And my mom had to like talk to him and be like, listen, like she wants to go here. Like she's never really asked for anything. And I hadn't. Like I never asked for anything. I even purchased my first car from them. Like I bought it. And so I got to go, and it was fundamentally the most life-changing experience of my life. It was the greatest 4 years of my life on this earth. My friends from that time are gold and are still my friends. And I literally am terrified. Like if I had gone somewhere else and didn't meet those people, like it would just have been probably not good for me. But that was the first time I said no and like really rocked the boat in my household. And it was super rewarding, but it changed our relationship for a little bit, you know? And I was so scared because my parents had always been like my best friends when I would tell them everything and I saw them every day. And then, yeah, and it's still hard to say no to my parents. Like I still don't really like upsetting them or rocking the boat, but I'm getting so much better at it because it's so important to have boundaries. Because, and I say this to people all the time, like one day your parents are going to close their eyes forever, hopefully before you do. Who do you want to have lived your life for, you or them? And I want to live it for me, you know? And it's so hard, especially as first generation kids, to not grow up and think that you have to live this life for your parents on their timeline with the things that they want, because they're essentially living through you, right? And so that was like that's the thing that I find the most difficult, because how dare I had the audacity to like have university paid for, and I got to live on campus, and my parents were paying my rent, and I had my dad's credit card. And I was just like, oh God, like I can't rock this boat. But I'm so glad that I did, because it just changed who I was as a person. It changed me. I'm like not the person that I would have been had I stayed living at home.
I love what you just said about, feeling like you owe this life to your parents. And it reminds me of this Khalil Gibran quote on children. And it says, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you." And I think that is such a classic thing that you just said for children of immigrants. It's because we know what it's cost them for them to be here and to set this life up for us. And we want to make them happy. We want to make them proud. And saying no to them can be terrifying. And that's often where our patterns of not being able to say no comes from. We can't say no to other people because it's never been modeled to us in our homes where we can say no to them. But I think that instead of seeing that act of defiance as a negative thing, it can be just seen as like really setting a foundation and setting an anchor for yourself. And I think like for me, I'm very cognizant that folks like me and you have very understanding parents, and we have very really progressive liberal homes, and so it is super easy for me to say like just say no and don't budge, and your parents will eventually come around. But I also recognize that there's some families and there's some children with parents who just they can't say no, and so I always wonder like how can those folks practice saying no and practice having that defiance in like in various ways in their life, so that they're not moving through this life living for somebody else. They can have the freedom to also live for themselves in the way that's best suited for them.
It's hard. I every day, so I like have clients every day, and every day I come home and I am so grateful for my parents because they bend, they do. And with a kid like me, they didn't really have a choice, because you may look at me in my 30s, but I've been this way since I was like could speak words. I have always been a vocal, unfiltered, too much energy, too much child. Like that's just how it went, right? So they never stood a chance in the first place. But they bend, and it's so nice that they bend. They bent against everything that I went headstrong against everything that they fundamentally believe in. Like even the act that I'm 32 and not married is an act of defiance in our culture, right? And so but they bent. And so I have children that I deal with in private practice that don't have parents like mine and are very embedded in this cultural programming. And so, but the thing that we got to remember is, and this is parents are terrified. And that's it. I haven't had a kid. You haven't had a kid. I don't know what that's like. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know what that's like, but I know that it's got to be the scariest thing on the face of this earth to be a parent. And the reason they're so scared is because they love you. They fundamentally love you. They just might not know how to go about it. Right? So, and I always say this to kids, I'm like, listen, if your parents are not willing to bend, you have to look at all the ways that they love you. That's where you got to start, right? Because we're so focused on all the things that they suck at, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have to be, and if you start with gratitude, things will start aligning, right? So just start with the basics. Just start with gratitude and the things that they do well, and then see where you can find your openings to open those conversations. Because when you start opening those conversations from a place of gratitude, they're not going to be as hostile. It's not going to be in anger or resentment. And there will be compromise. But that's where people have to start.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think you said it perfectly just a little while ago that it's an entire process of give and take. And it is an entire process of giving where needed, taking where needed. And on that note, thank you so much for giving us your time, giving me your time today. This has been, oh my God, this is honestly, I'm not saying this just to flatter you, but this is one of my favorite episodes thus far, because I think we went so many different directions, and I love that we were able to come back to that same place. And thank you so much, Pam. I hope you really enjoyed yourself as well.
I did. I love having these conversations. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. I don't think I could have ever imagined having these conversations with anybody else. And so, like Pam said, if you're the eldest daughter, you're the eldest kid, or if you just want to chit chat with Pam, you should definitely hit her up. Pam, can you tell everyone what your Instagram handle is, and tell us a little bit about your practice so that folks know how to reach you if they felt really inspired or they felt connected to you today?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Sangha Counseling Services. The website is also linked there. So I respond to my DMs, but my phone number is also on there, and so is email. And my practice is embedded in cognitive behavioral therapy, but also I take a person-centered approach. So every single client is different, but I deal with a lot of youth and a lot of family counseling right now, but also my specialty is anxiety and depression. Also because I have gone through those things, so I know kind of how to speak on them. But yeah, it's a really interesting space. And if you want to connect with me, please do. I do offer a sliding scale. So that's also, I think, something that's really important, because I want to be able to give people access to therapy when they might not have it. And also, we are seeing people in person. The rooms are socially distanced, and we do wear masks. So I think that's also really important to know.
Awesome. Hit her up, guys. That's it. Okay, guys, I don't know about you, but before this episode started, I felt like I didn't really have that much courage in saying no. But by the end of this episode, I have a little bit more courage and a little bit more confidence when it comes to saying no. And I think it's because Pam just did such a fantastic job in trying to teach me, you gotta know how to say no, bro. And again, sometimes I understand, like Pam said, it's still a learning process. I mean, we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves if it is still hard for us to say no. But if we're working on it, first of all, let's just stop and give ourselves a pat on the back, because there's some things that are so terrifying to say no to, and we're still doing it. We're still showing up for ourselves. And I love what Pam said, that it all comes back to yourself. And I think that is such a beautiful theme that kind of runs like a thread through most of the episodes of Brown Girl Guilt, is that you got to come back to your damn self, bro. It all comes back to you, self. It's the self and the self-love. It's the self and the self-care. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I know this was a little bit of a longer episode than usual, but can you blame me? It was such a fantastic time. As always, Brown Girl Guild every Sunday on Spotify, Apple, Google. Make sure you're liking, commenting, subscribing. It really does not help me if you're not doing all of the above. And continue to practice and marinate yourself in gratitude, glory, and grace. And I'll see you guys on the next one.